Wowzers, man. 20,000 friggin' subscribers. That's absolutely crazy. I cannot believe that many of you psychopaths took the effort to click that subscribe button down there. I've heard, and sadly ignored, enough YouTubers desperately begging for people to hit that button down there to know how much each one of those clicks actually means. So, thanks a lot. I'm glad you either liked my content enough to do so, or accidentally clicked it in some kind of drunken confusion and are wondering who the hell this asshole talking to you right now even is. Well, that's a question a lot of you have been asking. Who is this assumedly dashing, yet funny-sounding, fantagonistic guy anyways? Well, to celebrate this whole 20,000 thing, I decided to do a Q&A video so you could get to know who this guy who's been screaming at you about random comic shows and movies online even is. So, I posted a post over in the community section thingy over there that I'm only kind of starting to figure out, where you could submit questions for this video, and submit you did. I expected to get maybe 20, but no, I received a lot more than that. A lot of them were double ups, so that does slim it down quite a bit, but there's still quite a lot of questions that you wanted answered. I guess I'm that mysterious and fascinating, or maybe you're all just bored as hell. Either way, I got all the questions here, so let's go through them in about the order that they were all asked. And FYI, this is going to be a much more casual video than usual, as I'm sure you can already tell. So I may sound all normal here and there for a bit. Don't be afraid, I wasn't replaced. I'm just talking more off the cuff, so it may sound more awkward and less exuberant than normal. And fair warning, once these questions are answered, they can never be unanswered. If you're afraid of the existential horrors that these truths will reveal, turn back now and save yourself. For everyone else, let's just start going through them, nice and casual. The first question I received from you over there was, what is a comic from Marvel or DC that you hope gets adapted into a movie or TV show someday? That's a good question. From DC, there's two I really, really want to see. I mean, not so much a comic, but a team. That would be both the Justice Society of America and the Legion of Superheroes. Both of them are some of the most unique and awesome parts of DC. I would love to see a Justice Society movie set back in the 40s during World War II, but only if the people making it were going to take them seriously, not add in a bunch of other random characters, subtract them, change them horribly. I just want to see a more or less correct Justice Society, since they were the actual heroes who started the DC universe, and I think that any project you make has to try to honor them in a way. The Legion of Superheroes, I just have wanted to see forever done well. I mean, we've gotten little bits of them in Smallville and Supergirl and stuff, but not the glorious Silver Age Legion of Superheroes that the team always kind of reverts back to in comics. Sadly, I've already heard James Gunn be asked about the Legion thing and say that he's not really that interested in time travel. So, and we've already seen him toss frickin' arm fall off boy, reference Matter Eater Lad and stuff like that. So I don't really have my hopes up about that. But I do have my hopes up about the JSA, especially with that whole mural and having Wildcat on there. And, well, actually, I would say specifically that there aren't that many JSA characters on there is why I feel hopeful about that. Because that means maybe they're hoping to save them to use in some future thing. Anyhow, enough about that. For Marvel, my dream movie that I want to see made is a Squadron Supreme movie tangential to the MCU. And all I want them to do is grab every single one of the DCEU actors and put them in with Henry Cavill as Hyperion, Gal Gadot as Power Princess, Ben Affleck as Nighthawk, all that stuff, just give them their equivalent. I know it wouldn't be very good casting, but it would still be super awesome. I would love to see that. All right, next question. What is your favorite comic book movie that wasn't very accurate? That has to be Mystery Men, because Mystery Men is like barely anything like the comic it's based on. It was a team that worked with the Flaming Carrot. If I recall, I'm not looking at it right now, the only characters who were actually from the comics were Mr. Furious and the Shoveler, who were absolutely nothing like they were in the movie. That comic is almost nothing like that movie, but I love that movie. It's such a good movie about a bunch of absolute loser superheroes. Half the cast is made up. It's only loosely inspired. They basically took the name and a couple heroes, but I love that movie. Nothing like the comics. Question 3. What is your guilty pleasure superhero movie? Bad, but you love watching it anyways. I'd have to say probably X-Men The Last Stand. That movie isn't that bad compared to modern movies, but at the time, people thought it was dumb as crap. And it is kind of stupid. It takes a lot of what worked about the previous X-Men movies and loses a lot of it. Like, it's not as well written. The pacing is pretty stupid. I think the action is fucking awesome. You get to watch Juggernaut run through like 5 walls, kick Wolverine through the fucking wall. Wolverine, pushing himself on the ceiling while Professor X looks over and smiles as he dies tragically. You got all this awesome epic shit, but you've also got all this dumb shit like Cyclops dying early in the movie, the fucking Calypso and all these characters being nothing at all like what they're supposed to be. That awful use of Multiple Man completely wasted him. A lot of crap in that movie. Very stupid. Does not stand up to the other two, but I really like the action. I think the soundtrack is absolutely awesome. One of the coolest soundtracks I've ever heard in a superhero movie, so that'd be my pick. My second one would be Catwoman Halle Berry puts her head through bars like a cat and then is able to fit her whole body through as a cat does. It's the dumbest fucking movie ever. She does a catwalk as her fucking walk on the roofs. It's just fucking awful, that basketball scene, but A+, 10 out of 10 in my opinion. Number 4, when did you first get into superhero movies and how? I've always watched them just like everyone else, but the first one I really, really connected with was probably the Sam Raimi Spider-Man. That got me really back into comics after I hadn't been into them for a while. X-Men 3 also got me pretty interested in them just because it had so many characters in it. I love the other X-Men's, but for some reason I got weirdly nerdy with 3. And then when Dark Knight and the MCU came out, I was already a huge comic fan, but that got me really into the movies because they did a much cooler job than a lot of previous movies had done at that. And just watching through the first 4 MCU movies building up to Avengers, fucking awesome. Nothing can match that. That was so cool. Who is your favorite live action Spider-Man? That would be Amazing Spider-Man 2, Andrew Garfield. I don't really like how Spider-Man is that much in Amazing Spider-Man 1. I don't like the costume. I don't really like how he acts that much. But in Amazing Spider-Man 2, he's just Spider-Man right off the page, jumping around doing Spider-Man crap, that movie's a little fucking stupid. But the proportions of him, like how skinny but like tall and lanky Andrew Garfield is, I think looks so fucking awesome in that costume. I think it's the best the costume's ever looked. We'll see if the new Tom Holland one's going to beat it, but I doubt it because that one looks awesome. It's just a shame that movie is as dumb as it is, even though it is also a guilty pleasure for me. I do quite like it. Next question. How do you feel about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie? That is quite a question because League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is one of my favorite comics of all time. I absolutely loved that in every one of the sequels all the way to, what was the last one? Tempest. Yeah, Tempest. Yeah, that was it. I love how it takes all of historical movies, movies, books, pretty much everything, and then uses it like it's superhero continuity where it's all canon together and has this whole large history. It's just one of my absolute favorites. So I fucking hate that movie. I did not like that movie in any way whatsoever. I did not like it so much I have never actually finished it. I've started it, I've tried to watch it, I've seen random bits of it. I like the comics so much that I absolutely hate that movie with every fiber of my being. If I completely wipe the comic from my mind and try to watch it as some junky-ass Victorian superhero movie, maybe I'll be able to like it. I'll try that next time I'm going to watch it. Next time I watch it will probably be whenever it comes time to do a ranking video of it, which will probably be my most pissed-off ranking video I ever do. So that will be fun. Next question. When did you start reading comics? I'd say the earliest comics I ever started reading was probably Calvin and Hobbes and Garfield, like newspaper strip collections that I used to get from the library. After that, when I'd go back to the library, they had a comic section, and I remember some of the earliest ones I grabbed that I really liked were The Tick, The Naked City, the first volume of the Tick comics, and Essential Spider-Man Volume 1, both of which I got because I just loved the cartoon shows already so much. So once I read those, I really, really, really liked those. That would be the earliest, superhero comics I can remember reading. All right. Do you read manga? If so, who is your favorite mangaka? Yes, I read manga. I read a lot of manga. I've read most of the, major shonen comics, whether I liked them or not. I've powered through a lot of them, just to kind of know them. Who my favorite mangaka would be is probably the ones I think of are, I don't know how to say this, Hiroya Oku, or however you say that, who does Gigant and Inuyashiki. Inuyazaki, however you say that, sorry. I really love how weirdly realistic his art is, the hyper-violence of it, the just pure nihilistic dread of the whole thing while characters fight through and try to believe in things. I just find those stories so fascinating. Gantz is one of the coolest comics I've ever read, one of the worst endings I've ever seen, but the journey makes it worthwhile. The other one I think of is Go Nagai, who is a classic mangaka from back in the day. Devilman, Cutie Honey, Mazinger Z, even though I have not gotten to read an official English translation of that yet, which pisses me off. But he's the manga guy that most of your favorite mangaka grew up on and are inspired by. If you haven't read his work, I definitely recommend going back to read it because it's super awesome. After that, we got, who is your favorite, least favorite, and most mid-Avenger? As an Avenger, I'd have to say my favorite member of the Avengers is Captain America. I think that once he joined the team, it became the Avengers. Before that, it was just a collection of weird assholes who didn't know what the hell they were doing. But Captain America is the one who brings that team together, and he's basically the, like, bedrock of the Marvel Universe as, you know, a member of the Avengers. When he's on the team, it's a real Avengers. If he's not, then it's just not. And I'm glad that the movies recognized that and made him, like, even though Tony Stark is kind of like the main character of the MCU, I think Captain America is the real main character, and I think they did a cool job at that. Least favorite, I mean, I'm not really one to be, like, to hate characters. I try to like every character in comics if I can. It's not always possible. But least favorite is easily going to be, after thinking about it, Teen Tony. The cool, new, hip, young Tony Stark who replaced the old Tony Stark in the 90s when it revealed that Tony Stark, oh my god, he'd been evil all along, oh my god. So we replaced him, we beat him, he's gone, he's dead. We replaced him with a cool new Tony Stark who everyone fucking hated, because of course they did. Oh, from some alternate universe timeline. Everyone hated this character, of course they did. So he got killed off like immediately after when Onslaught was slaughtering people. Never brought back. Let's hope that this is not how they decide to bring back Tony Stark in the movies, but if they do, I sure would think that was awesome. My most mid-Avenger, I don't know, Thunderstrike, maybe? When Spider-Woman was revealed to have been the Skrull Queen all along, and then anything I liked about Spider-Woman was actually the fucking Skrull, but oh no, they act just like them, so I'm supposed to transfer that over to her? No, fuck that shit. I hated that. I thought that was such a dumb, random twist. I think the Skrull Queen looks cool as Spider-Woman in that costume, but I just thought that was the dumbest twist ever, like most of the Skrull reveals were. In Secret Invasion, if you have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. And if you want to go read that Teen Tony thing, that was called The Crossing. Go give that a read. One of the greatest arcs of all time. Anyhow, what is your favorite comic book you love to read? I'm interpreting that not as just my favorite comic book, but a comic that I pull out and I read all the time. And that, I would say, is Multiversity by Grant Morrison, which is just kind of going through, mapping out all of the 52 multiverses within DC after the number 52 had been set back in Infinite Crisis. This came out after New 52, so it's got a little bit of that crap in there, which I've referenced to you guys before. I fucking hate New 52, but I can go into that some other time. Multiversity, though, is awesome because it maps out all 52 universes. You get a literal map. You get a little blurb about each one of them. And then the comic itself, each issue is kind of based in one of the universes, but you also get to see different ones. And by the end, they're fighting the Gentry, which is a villain so incredibly powerful that they can't beat it. It's impossible. With the Empty Hand being like the ultimate villain of all DC comics, where the Empty Hand is interpreted as when you finish a comic, your hand is empty. You don't have a comic in your hand anymore. So and that, when you go back to reality, is when comics die, or these universes die for these characters because you're not reading them, you're in the boring real world. It's just an awesome comic. I would not suggest it as the first comic you read, but if you haven't read it, please read it because it's one of my absolute favorites. Grant Morrison was one of my absolute favorite writers, and I feel that comic is the epitome of him being the biggest fucking nerd who ever lived, so it really speaks to me. Next up, who is your favorite obscure hero or villain? Well, since you did not ask about my favorite obscure Marvel or DC hero or villain, I'm going to go even more obscure. The one that sticks out to me is one of my absolute favorites from the Golden Age, Green Turtle. Black Terror and Daredevil from back then are probably my favorite characters from that time, but since they were both prominently featured in Project Superpowers, pretty much everyone knows who they are who kind of half knows about this stuff. Green Turtle, I don't believe was. He may have been in the big spread at the end, but I don't think he had a big part. He is the first Chinese superhero, and he's based back in World War II when the Chinese and Japanese were having a very unfriendly fight against each other. Green Turtle and his little psychotic sidekick Burma Boy brutally, violently just slaughter Japanese soldiers who are attacking small Chinese villages. One of the interesting things about him is the author intended him to be Chinese, but the publisher did not want an Asian guy in comics back in the time as their main character, you know. So even though his sidekick Burma Boy and his love interest were both Chinese, Green Turtle had a more pinkish hue to his skin. However, to get over this, in order to have him still be Asian, he had him always never show his face or always cover his face with his cape. So Green Turtle comes off as being super shady and mysterious all the time as he runs around slaughtering Japanese soldiers who are attacking the villages and stuff. And he is just a super interesting character with covers of him friggin' strangling guys. It's just a fucking psychopath. I like him quite a bit. People have tried to revive him, but they always fuck him up because you just can't really take him out of that time period. If you put him in America or in the modern day and stuff, he's boring as shit. There's a certain magic to him that's really, really cool. I'll let you in a little secret. I have a project. No, you don't need to know about that. Anyway, moving on to the next question, which is multiple people ask this in different ways. What made you want to start your channel / what made you want to make content? The answer is pretty simple. The movies just got that awful. And people I saw complaining about them online could complain about how shitty that they had become, but not why they were shitty adaptations. The top YouTube pop culture critics that I was watching, a lot of them dip their toes in comics. They're interested in the characters, but they don't actually read them. I'm sure you've seen that many times. And that annoyed the crap out of me. I was so sick of sitting there watching these guys talk about this shit and then have them say something that's just totally wrong, complain about why a character's done poorly in a way that's totally wrong, and it just drove me absolutely nuts. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I sitting here complaining to my computer screen? I could fucking complain to all of you. And apparently enough of you liked to listen to that I got to 20,000 subscribers. The other thing is, you've got your two camps of creators. You've got your, everything sucks. It's all, fill in the blank cultural talking points that are negative. And then you've got your other side of, everything's great. What is those people talking about? It's got fill in the blank cultural talking points. That's a good thing. And I was just so fucking sick of it. So I'm like, you know what? No one wants to listen to this shit. The fucking age of I don't know, for lack of a better word, woke versus anti-woke, that's fucking over. We're done with that. It's the age of, no, this fucking sucks. I hate this. And I hate this for these blunt reasons that I will say without being scared what one side or another's going to say. It's just over. That whole thing is over. And I thought I could add something not positive, not negative, but fucking honest. That was pretty much my goal. As someone who eats and breathes this stuff, I was just sick to death of having all of superhero discourse specifically, but pop culture discourse as well, being shepherded by guys who aren't actually fans of the stuff that they're critiquing. I don't really care if somebody says they hate it or not. I don't really care what their reasons are. I'll engage with all of that. That's all fine. But if they're not actually passionate about it, why the hell does anyone give a shit what they have to say about the subject? It's the reason that I'm not going to if they make a new Sex and the City movie, I'm not going to talk about how well it's adapted from the old movies because I don't watch that series. I'm not interested in it. But I am interested in a lot of stuff coming out, so I think I'm rambling now. Basically, everyone was sick of hearing me talk about this shit in real life, so I'm purging it out on the internet. Let's move on. Next up is, what is your favorite bad adaptation of a character? Whew, that is quite a question. It's kind of a basic answer. I'm probably going to say Mantis in Guardians of the Galaxy. She's one of my favorite MCU characters. I find her really interesting and funny, and I just like the character. But she is, besides the antenna, I mean, if you've watched my ranking videos, you know, besides the antenna and the empathic powers, she's just not even the same character. Like, literally, not even the same character. So that'd probably be the first one that comes to mind. I do have an honorable mention of the Question in the DC animated universe, who is not really the Question. He's basically Rorschach as the Question. And I think that the paranoid conspiracy theorist version of him, just with his name, I think works really well. And I think he's really awesome in that show. A lot of people agree with me, and I know a lot of people really love him in the show and then go to the comics. And you've got him as like an Eastern philosophy guy or a Randian objectivist guy, and they get really confused and they don't know what the hell they're reading. If I was writing Question, I'd put all three of them together because I love when people just take all these different elements and put them together into one character. I think it's really awesome. And there is some of that Randian stuff in Rorschach and a little bit of it still in the DC animated universe Question, but not to the same level. None of the philosophy stuff, though. Anywho, which is the version that's kind of the most popular in modern uses of the character. Though I guess in modern uses, they just make him the DC animated universe one. I gotta stop rambling. Let's try to answer these a bit quicker. This is getting too fucking long. Next question is, what is your favorite D-list comic book superhero or villain? That one is easy. In DC, it's going to be Prez Rickard, first teen president. I fucking love Prez Rickard. I think he is such a weird character. When they amend the law so that teens can become presidents, Prez Rickard, who was named Prez because his mom knew he was going to become president one day, is voted president of the United States. And he brings in some weird-ass hippie shit kind of way he leads the people that's not really fully extrapolated on. And in his old series, he does weird shit like deal with the vampire emissary from Transylvania and nonsensical crap like that. It only lasted like 5 issues, but he's brought back quite often. He was brought back in Sandman in an incredibly depressing arc that kind of used the spirit of the hippie age to like how people are how their worldview kind of becomes more cynical over time. He's also really awesomely used in Dark Knight Strikes Again as a president, but he's a grown man in there, and it reveals he's just President Rickard. They never say Prez. And he was revealed to be a hologram pretty quickly. I thought both of those were pretty funny. I know he's been used a couple other times, but those were the times I really liked how they used him. Oh, and he's the eternal president of, oh God, what universe is it? Whatever universe Sunshine Superman is from in Grant Morrison's use of multiversity, where he turned that into a whole hippie world. Very fun character. Very fucking weird part of continuity. In Marvel, it's going to be a more traditional character, but not really. That would be Razorback, who's a mutant trucker who wears a giant fucking warthog mask thing, then goes to rescue his sister, winds up fighting and then teaming up with Spider-Man. He is a mutant with the awesome power to drive any vehicle. Oh man, he's just absolutely awesome. He's like a weird redneck guy. I feel like he was made up when they were just drugged out of their mind trying to come up with a plot for the next issue. He's kind of a joke character, but kind of serious at the same time. Whenever he shows up now, it's usually in the background or is like, oh, look at this crazy Marvel character. But he's one of my absolute favorites, and I was so fucking happy when Marvel Legends released a toy of him, which I snagged immediately. I never thought I'd get to have that. Next question. What is a character you would want adapted if they could be adapted correctly? Well, obviously Razorback. But my second answer would be Power Girl. I've always hoped to see I always hoped that I would get to see Power Girl in the CW Supergirl. I thought she'd be such a fun character to bring in there, since the Kara in there is kind of like, I don't know, more traditionally feminist ideals. I thought having Power Girl come in dressed all cool and slutty and being all tomboy and tough would have been a really cool way to contrast the two characters, where they wouldn't have got along at first, but they would have become friends at the end. Power Girl, I think, is such an interesting character because of her weird-ass continuity. For those of you who don't know, she's basically the Supergirl of Earth 2, who looks and dresses totally different, acts totally different, just a totally different character. But she was introduced while there was an Earth 2 Superman who was the Golden Age Superman, and they made up their own... They were making up their own continuity for that world as it kept growing before they got merged together later. You know what? Don't need to get into that. Power Girl's an awesome character. I think she'd be really fun because she's just such a continuity glitch within DC, but she's such a fucking popular character, both for her personality and more obvious reasons. I'm hoping with the emphasis on the Superman family in the new DCU and the fact that Peacemaker's doing multiverse stuff, which really surprised me, that makes my hope for a Power Girl go up exponentially, which I would never have thought I'd have a chance to see the character in live action, but let's hope. Next up, who is the best character you think the movies did better than the comics? That has an actual answer. The answer is Blade, because before the Blade movie, he was not the cool trench coat leather guy he was now. He dressed totally different, came from a totally different style of comic. After the Blade movie, he just turned into the movie Blade. All the, cool Wesley Snipes vibes, some motherfuckers trying to ice skate uphill, all that shit. Completely recreated the character, while also not recreating the character. He's still the same guy for the most part, just more edgy and cool. I mean, it's laughable to think that they looked at this and even thought, let's make a movie of it, but they did. Who is your favorite superhero/villain? This one was actually asked multiple times in multiple ways, so I'll give the top 5, so I don't have to keep answering over and over. My favorite superhero in Marvel, DC, anything is Guy Gardner. Guy Gardner is the greatest hero in all of time. He is greatest of the Green Lanterns, despite what Hal Jordan stans may say. I love the character because he's just an obnoxious, annoying douchebag all the time. But he is competent, and, I mean, in more modern stories, he's more competent. In older stories, he was like a dipshit buffoon. But he's competent and badass, and actually a good guy, even though he's an asshole all the time. Second up, which is a very close tie, would be Mr. Fantastic of Marvel. Because I love the way he's like this traditional 50s scientist guy, but living on into the modern day. Very much inspired by the kinds of archetypes of the time, so he's got this old-fashioned vibe to him. I really like how logical and straightforward he is, having trouble with all the emotional stuff. I think that's a really fun aspect to the character. I think it's so funny that this regular-looking guy stretches like this, and he's willing to go into all these ridiculous, obnoxious shapes, has no shame about it, because it's an efficient power. If he's going to stretch his fucking head and arms around a lab to do an experiment, he's not going to worry about how stupid he looks. Somebody like Plastic Man really does the stretchy powers really well because he's all zany and crazy. Even Elongated Man because he's kind of a dorky character. But Reed Richards comes in like he's the coolest, most masculine, tough guy there is, like main character of the Marvel Universe. And then he's doing all this stretchy stuff. I really, really like it. And he's the smartest guy in the Marvel Universe. You can keep arguing with that, but we all know. Come on, he is. And I just really love the character because of that. Third's going to be Luke Cage, Power Man, Hero for Hire. Both his old school Hero for Hire Yellow Jacket stuff and his later Avengers stuff where he just wears a t-shirt. I love the fact that this guy is just kind of a regular guy from the streets, bulletproof skin, and he winds up joining the Avengers, being one of the main heroes, never really wearing a costume. Just used to be called Power Man, but now goes by Luke Cage. I just think he's really awesome. Next would be Power Girl, who I already said a bit why she's cool. I really like her weird continuity. I think that's so fun. I love her brash, kind of bullheaded personality. I think it's cool. They took what was a relatively simple costume, turned it into one of the coolest costumes ever, and then keep fucking ruining it over and over, but she always returns back to kind of a classic look. And I love her connection to Earth 2 in the JSA quite a bit. And then fifth is going to be Dazzler, Allison Blair from Marvel Comics, who is just... I don't know why they thought that this was going to be the next big character and gave her own comic series. Like the whole disco, rock thing of that time was going to be something... she's such a bad idea for a character. And yet at the same time, this chick in bell bottoms with roller skates who converts sound into light and fucking sings... she's weirdly stood the test of time. She keeps being brought back in the modern day. I used to think that I was the only Dazzler stan out there, but I keep seeing her brought back. She gets posters and covers all the time, so apparently there's a lot of other Dazzler fans out there. I quite like her series. I like her philosophy. I unironically like her, too. I like her, I want to achieve my dream. Go for it philosophy. If I was going to have a catchphrase, go for it would be what it is, even though nobody uses that anymore. And she banged the Beyonder, which is pretty badass. For villains, we've got the Juggernaut, who I like because he runs through walls. He's the goddamn Juggernaut, bitch. It's pretty simple. I love any villain who runs through walls. I love Rhino. I love, Piledriver from the Wrecking Crew. Hammerhead. Just guys who put their head down and smash through walls. Best archetype ever. Juggernaut is the absolute best of that. And I love that he's like the most powerful villain in the world. And he's not that ambitious. He doesn't usually want to take over the world. He just wants money. He takes jobs. He's just great character. Next is going to be Dr. Doom, who I think is the greatest villain of all time, like unobjectively. I mean, he looks fucking cool. He's Reed Richards' antagonist. I mean, I don't even know how to explain why he's so cool besides all the reasons that are obvious. Third is going to be Thanos. I always called Thanos. I know it's Thanos nowadays, but Thanos is how I read him back in the day. I absolutely love his nihilistic ambition to just, whatever his goal is, he will go achieve it. I love that he's like a philosopher villain. He's always soliloquying on what he's doing, the deeper philosophies of it. When you stare into the void stares back. His eyes are two voids. It's just that awesome philosophy stuff Jim Starlin loved writing back in the day. Modern Thanos from the MCU, I like him. He is not even close to my top 10 favorite villains. I love classic comic Thanos. I'm glad that in comics, for the most part, he's kept the majority of what makes him cool. He hasn't been too corrupted by the movies, and he just looks cool. Next is going to be Dr. Octopus, who I just think is awesome. I don't know how to keep repeating the same things. I love that he's got a different look. He's got an awful haircut. He's overweight. He's ugly. And he's such an arrogant asshole. He's such a absolute narcissist. I love how he's basically just a Spider-Man villain. You know, he just fights Spider-Man. But when he puts his mind to it, he's a world-level villain. He's one of the most dangerous villains in the world. But he is so fucking obsessed with Spider-Man that he basically sits there fighting him. I think his robot tentacles are just awesome. I'm a sucker for tentacles in general. So a guy with robot tentacles who, you know... Yeah, I lost my train of thought. But Dr. Octopus is fucking awesome. And fifth, I have a DC character. It would be Black Adam. I absolutely love Black Adam. Both the classic, way back when Fawcett Comics, Black Adam, the kind of, you know, awkward in between the modern version and classic Black Adam, like just him being a villain. I'm just evil. And then, but I really, really like when Black Adam joins the JSA and starts trying to be a good guy, but he just believes in this, like, old school eye for an eye kind of justice that leads him to go back to his home country, just slaughter everyone, take over, which puts him at arms with the JSA. He sees himself as a liberator who's saving his people, and he's able to convince others that he is, but he's a goddamn hypocrite because when bad things happen and he loses his temper, he'll slaughter an entire country. He'll just slaughter all of Bialia, just slaughter everyone, millions of people. He's just an absolute rage-filled psychopath. But then afterwards, he'll still act like he's an anti-hero, and he'll sometimes team up with the heroes. My favorite Black Adam moment of all time is in Final Crisis, when Captain Marvel, Freddie Freeman at the time, goes to convince him to help out against Darkseid's invasion. And he's like, Black Adam, would you brood upon your throne of skulls while the world's being destroyed? I just thought that was the perfect Black Adam moment. Then he does go team up with them, which I really like. So he can waver from good to evil. He's so fucking powerful that if he decides I'm a good guy today, they don't really fight him. They're just like, sure, Black Adam, just anything that'll stop you from slaughtering hundreds of people. Anywho, would you ever do more anime manga comparisons? And then they asked specifically about Full Metal Alchemist. Absolutely, hell yes, I would. I already did Dragon Ball, as you've seen. I'm excited to do One Piece. I want to find the right moment to do that, where people are most interested in how similar or different that is. There's a lot of weird, shitty ones that have come out. I did not watch Full Metal Alchemist. I don't know if that one was any good. I mean, I've watched the anime. I haven't watched the live action. I really want to do the Yu Yu Hakusho one. I really want to do the Death Note one. That one's, oh my god. I've got a whole list of anime ones and manga ones. If you have ones you want to see, drop them below. I'll add them to the list. I'll have to figure out when to do them and sort through them, but eventually I'll start knocking those off the list. What is the origin of your profile picture? Well, when I decided to start a channel, I wanted a mascot character because I knew I was going to be keeping my identity a secret. So I worked with a few ideas, but once I came up with the name Fantagonistic, I wanted to have kind of like I saw myself as kind of a villain to the people making these shitty movies and shows that keep coming out. So I kind of designed the character to be kind of like a gentleman thief kind, or kind of I was kind of inspired by from the look by how let me what's the name? Arsène Lupin looks in Le Holmes Mysterio in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Volume 2 and the little part you see him in. Little bit of some modern ones, like I mean a little bit of Tuxedo Mask in there, same kind of vibe, and other things like that. It's funny because I've had a few people point out how much the little character asks if he's inspired by Mumbo from Teen Titans, which is funny to me because they're both born out of the same archetype of villain character. But I did not think of that when I was doing it. I think it's really funny that he looks so much like that. But if yeah, maybe I would have just grabbed that character up if I had thought of it ahead of time. But I didn't. I'm glad. I just designed my own little guy. The little mustache is kind of be like, you know, a mustache twirling villain of an old silent film. Nothing really that specific, just kind of a vibe I was going for of, you know, we're revolting against the so-called heroes building out these movies. Anywho, are you familiar with Transformers? If so, would you consider making videos on the Transformers films? Hell yes, I will. It's very high on my to-do list. Doing a top 20 worst adapted Transformers is one of the things I am most excited to do. I'm a huge fan of the classic Generation 1 Transformers. I really like Beast Wars as well. I have to make a rule. I am not allowed to buy Transformers toys because I will fucking bankrupt myself because they make so many good ones and they are so goddamn expensive if you get into them. If I had known that goddamn Unicron was coming out when on a Kickstarter way back in the day, I would have wasted money on that. Luckily, I did not hear about it, and it's too much for me to buy now. Anywho, yes, I absolutely do want to. I'm very excited to. I hear they're bringing back Michael Bay. Oh, God. Yeah, I'm not a fan of those movies, so it's going to be very cathartic to pick out who's horrible on there and to see what a best adapted list looks like. That will be absolutely hilarious. Favorite non-superhero movie? I would say that is Fight Club. I loved Fight Club when I first saw it. Totally changed my life. Yeah, every time I watch it, I get more out of it. I think it's just a terrific movie. Both cool and says a lot. A lot of dipshits out there in the modern day don't seem to understand it because they're too hung up on the superficial aspects of it because they're fucking simpletons who think they have media literacy. It's the same dipshits who watch Starship Troopers and think, oh my God, how could this glorify war? Absolute morons. But Fight Club is an incredibly, incredibly interesting movie. It's one of the few adaptations I like a lot better than the book. I don't actually like the book that much. I like the writer, but I'm not that into the book. I think the movie does a better job exploring the themes that it's exploring. One of the few situations I feel that way. I will say nothing about it. If you have not watched it, go watch it right now because it is an awesome movie. Even if you're not into the stuff it's exploring, it's fucking cool. Anyways, favorite animal. I don't really have a favorite animal. When I was a kid, it was a skunk, so I guess I'll say that. I always liked that they were black and white. I liked the stripe. I guess I liked that they made people stinky. I thought that was pretty cool. I had, so there you go. Who is your favorite DC speedster? That would be Jay Garrick. The first and the best. I love that he's still around. I think it's so awesome that he lives on in the modern day. Not a lot to say. Jay Garrick's just a cool character. I guess if I had to pick a second, I'm quite a fan of the Jessie Quick version of Liberty Bell, who has both her mom and dad's powers, and when she recites the speed formula, she also gets super speed still. I'm sad that she's back to being Jessie Quick. I like her better as Liberty Bell, but that would be my second pick. How did you get into comics? What got you into comics? When did you start reading comics? A lot of questions like that. I touched upon that before. So like I said, old comic strip Calvin and Hobbes. But let me say when I got really fucking into comics. The comic that really got me to start actually reading comics, I think, was checking out Ultimate Spider-Man from the library. It had already been published for a while. These were like older volumes. I don't know. I can't remember when this was or how old I was. But, you know, I started reading through those. Then because of that, I grabbed Ultimate X-Men. I think I bought Ultimate X-Men. Doesn't matter. I read through that and then the Ultimates. And those all got me... that's how I started kind of getting into a universe. I think it's really smart to do these like side universes like the Ultimate Universe or what they're doing with the Absolute Universe. I think that's really smart because you're kind of encouraging younger people who are curious about this stuff but don't want to learn about like 80 years of history to like follow these characters. And then when they get bored of that, they're probably going to go over to the normal universe, as I did, through Mark Miller, who brought me in through Civil War, I think was where my main entry point was. And I got really into that. And then I think I'd already read a couple of the Bendis comics, like event comics, like Avengers Disassembled and shit from before that. After that, I did get on that Bendis train for a while. Long-term wise, I'm not really a big Bendis fan, but at the time, I was really enjoying his stuff. Other comics like Sentry, I got really into. Just a lot of random ass Marvel graphic novels I was reading. I'd say that's about when I first got really like seriously into reading, and then I moved on to DC ones too, and and then eventually started making my way backwards to some classic runs and classic stuff until spread out in random directions. Yeah, I had a friend who was actually collecting more comics than I was. He started like buying a lot more graphic novels and actual issues and shit. And I would read whatever he had, which was a lot of Marvel stuff at that time. What is your favorite comic book adaptation? Personally, I would say, my favorite would probably be Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I think it's one of the best ones at doing a job of capturing the spirit of decades of comics and putting it together all in one. It does a really good job specifically, I think, with Hank Pym and Wasp, because they have been so fucked up across the decades. Everyone grabs them and just makes Hank Pym a wife beater and makes Wasp just nothing. She's got to be so tough, even though her power is to get so small and shoot little blasts. I really love how Hank Pym is just a nerdy scientist who is a superhero, tries to help out. I mean, he doesn't want to be initially in there, but you know what I mean. And I really like that Wasp is very girly like she was in the early comics, but has the spunk and tenacity of later comics, so they don't just turn her into a tough girl like they always turn girl characters now, which is a shame. Captain America, Iron Man, they're just absolutely awesome. Hulk, I really like how they did Hulk in there, because they don't just take Hulk angry. They really try to look at the Hulk across all of his decades and kind of make him more of a character. I think that that's something that I don't think it would have been that good in the MCU, but I really like it in that cartoon because I want him more as a character. But he does do all the classic Hulk smash stuff. I loved as they were adding characters in. Hawkeye was super cool in there. Black Widow. Black Panther was awesome. I just really like everybody. I like everyone. I like all the villains. I like the stories they chose to tell. I like the art style, trying to pay homage to kind of a cartoony version of Jack Kirby's style. It's just great. You can tell those guys actually read the comics. How does one get into comics? Well, the simple answer is just grab something that looks cool and start reading it. If it sucks, try again, and hopefully keep going until you find something that doesn't suck. You'll find something you're into eventually. But if you're trying to find an entry point into Marvel and DC, in my opinion, one of the best ways to get into comics is through out-of-continuity limited series. Because then you get to read and learn about the characters a bit and get to kind of get a feeling for the scope of how big these universes are without actually having to know too many like callbacks and specifics to old continuity you've never heard of. Comics like Kingdom Come, Marvel's, Dark Knight Returns, New Frontier, Earth X, when they did the Ultimate Universe, that was a good one for that, but that one's super dated now. I don't know how that reads in the modern day. But they've got the Absolute Universe at DC. That's kind of, you can get on the ground floor of that one. Once you've read through a bit of those, you'll have a better sense of what superhero universes are like, and you can kind of then ease yourself into the more convoluted continuity. So when you know like a character or writer that you like a lot, you can look up their most iconic runs. Just pick whatever one sounds interesting to you, read it. Again, like before, if it's not for you, toss it in the garbage, try again. Keep going until you find one that clicks. Then once you've read those runs, see if those writers specifically have read other, or if those writers have done other runs, if those characters have other iconic runs. Just keep exploring and building out. Eventually, that will lead you to other writers, other characters you get interested in, and you'll keep exploring out. Sometimes writers write a whole thing where one character leads into the other. That can be really helpful. Before you know it, if you kind of follow that process, you're going to be going to the comic shop and buying, looking up what's coming out right now or catching up and following along. And you will be an absolute nerd who has nothing else to talk about but comic shit before you know it. Between Marvel and DC, which one is easier for beginners? So DC has more jumping on points where it's like they'll either do a hard or soft reboot of the universe, and it's kind of designed to be a start reading here. They design those to be easy jumping on points. I don't know that they actually are. I feel like they're actually pretty shitty for it, because you're going to say you start reading at New 52 and you fucking love it. you've never read a comic before. Then you get to Rebirth, and everything you love about New 52, they're like, oh, never mind. We're appealing to the fans from before New 52. And you're like, what? Or you start reading when I did, which was kind of like around the Infinite Crisis like time. Like they'd already been out, but that's the graphic novels I started reading until I got caught up. New 52 comes along, they're like, oh, we don't need you anymore. We're appealing to new viewers. And that kind of stuff can really suck. I imagine it was the same for somebody who read before and after Crisis on Infinite Earths. But anyway, yeah, I feel like that would have been very frustrating. So I think I'm going to say Marvel, because you can just pick up Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, just their original runs, and just start reading. And even though there'll be parts that are fucking stupid or parts that go against everything you like, it'll eventually even out, and it'll all be one long story. You can just read it from beginning to end if you are so inclined. Or you can just pick up some random era and just read. Marvel's recently been trying to do some of those kind of initiatives, but they don't usually reboot continuity. What they do that pisses everyone off is change things to match the movies because they're trying to bring in movie fans. Doesn't work. Total waste of time. But I would say Marvel's easier to read. You can just pick up at any random place and start following along a lot easier. However, Marvel will always call back to old shit from the 60s, like from all the different characters. With DC, they're going to call back to Crisis. They're going to call back to a few distinct parts, but like you don't actually need to have read as much old shit for DC. You do to get all the little continuity nods and stuff, but it'll be easier to just jump in now and have never read anything for DC because the heroes are so iconic. With Marvel, they're going to expect that you've read like, Kraven's Last Hunt or The Death of Gene Wolfe, stuff like, Gwen Stacy died, stuff like that. They're going to assume that you've read that, random ass old comics that you don't know anything about if you just pick up Spider-Man right now. So they both have their pluses and minuses. Why/what inspired you to be a comic connoisseur? So I'd always loved the medium and characters of comics, but what made me be a comic connoisseur when I became completely indoctrinated in like comic continuity and reading as many comics as possible was probably when I started following the Jeff Johns rabbit hole at DC. Everything he writes kind of led into the next thing, and I love how he'd sum up decades of convoluted continuity in only a few easy-to-follow panels. And if the past continuity was, in his opinion, good, he'd usually preserve it and elevate it in a way that would make you want to go back and read those classic stories because they'd seem cooler than they would be if you just grabbed them out of nowhere. And if he thought it was total crap, he'd usually find a way to retcon it in a way that would not undo it, but would retroactively make it more interesting as part of the history of the universe. Yeah, and the way all the series would lead in and out of each other really encourage you to get really fucking nerdy about everything. You read Teen Titans, Green Lantern, JSA, they all lead to Infinite Crisis, they all lead to 52, they all lead back into their series, they all lead, just they'd keep leading one to the next, and then he'd work with other writers, get you to go read some Mark Waid comics, some Grant Morrison comics. It just... At that time at DC, it was so easy to read like everything. It was really fun. And so I got super into DC continuity at that time. The other major writer who got me really into comic universes and continuity, though, was ironically Alan Moore, since he is not that into that stuff, but specifically his America's Best Comics line. I was so inspired to see an entire universe created by one guy that had so many different characters and stories that were all inspired by all these random decades of comics and literary history with like, Promethea, Tom Strong, Tomorrow's Stories, which one am I forgetting? Like the characters in Tom Strong's Terrific Tales, something I'm forgetting. Anyway, they all, even though they had nothing to do with each other, and you'd read them and they felt like they couldn't possibly be canon, they treated each other like they were canon, which really felt like how old Marvel or DC comics were before they decided upon this shared universe thing, where you'd have characters like, the Spectre, Hawkman, Flash, they all exist in the same universe. Like Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Hulk, Thor, they'd all feel like they didn't really fit together, but they made them fit together. I just thought that was so cool. And that inspired me to be like really passionate about following how these different characters fit together. I just got super nerdy about it. Those writers, and then Grant Morrison, who does like a lot of really old deep cuts that really encourages you to read a lot of old comics. Like he'll grab something from the Golden or Silver Age, usually Silver, and bring it in, and then you'd want to go back and read it. just created my lifelong passion for the superhero medium to the point where I want to read everything and learn about every single character as much as possible. Because it all felt like, with writers like that, like it matters, because these are such long, rich stories with inspirations and continuity that reach back decades before I was born, and not just random one-offs like a lot of modern writers do, which is a real shame. There's a lot of writers now who are doing a good job at that. I think Ali Ewing does a pretty good job. I think Jeremy Adams does a pretty good job. Yeah, a couple other writers, not as many as there were in that time, but there's still people holding that torch who I hope are indoctrinating people nowadays. Have you read / are you a fan of Spawn? If so, would you do a comic accuracy ranking of the movie? So there's people who do not like dark, gritty 90s comics. I'm not one of those. I think they're fucking awesome. I think all of them are awesome every decade. So yes, I absolutely love Spawn. I think he's got one of the coolest designs in all of comics. His backstory's friggin' awesome. The scarred face when he takes it off. All of that's so cool. I'm only on like volume 5 of these little mini graphic novels I have. That's probably just like issue 30 something. Yes, I'm absolutely going to do the movie at some point. I've been waiting for them to do a new movie. I don't know why they haven't. I think I read there's some ideas in production, but it's not a traditional movie. I feel like Spawn is such an obvious character to do a modern movie of because he just fucking looks cool. And I mean, he's Venom on steroids. Come on, let's do it. Next up, what's your favorite street tier villain from Marvel and DC? DC's easy. It's Captain Cold. I love that he's kind of a... I mean, classic Captain Cold was a bit different, but the modern Captain Cold, that he's like a working class villain. He's like, I just do what I gotta do to get by, and I got this stolen ice gun, and I use it to fight the Flash. And I love that he leads the rogues and kind of wrangles them all in. Like, a lot of them are like a lot more ambitious than he would be, or a lot more psychopathic like Heatwave, but he wrangles them all in, and because of that, Flash goes a little lighter on him than he would otherwise, because we all know Flash could fucking destroy anybody if he really wanted to. But yeah, Captain Cold. One of my favorite comics is Final Crisis Rogue's Revenge, where him and the rogues are all dirty and scuffed up, wearing these bright, silly costumes, but they look like shit, and they're just so hard-boiled and funny, and I love that they're just basically a bunch of robbers. My favorite one at Marvel would probably be Rhino. I said I love guys who run through walls. I love that it's this guy who got this fucking synthetic skin stuck on him, and he's just this dumb guy who just basically takes on jobs for people. Is, runs at Spider-Man. Spider-Man jumps out of the way. He hits a wall. He's like, oh, Spider-Man. Will you ever do a Jurassic Park adaptation list from the novel to the movie? Book adaptation rankings are a lot harder because I do not have pictures to work off of. And the 3 C's don't work in the same way because character and continuity, you can still say their abilities. You can still kind of say where they come from and what they do. But costume is very different because you don't see them. In some books, they're described well enough that you can say, they look like what they do. But in some books, they don't even tell you what race a character is. So that a lot of those would be null. I believe in Jurassic Park they described the outfits pretty well. It's been a long time since I read that. But it would be really fun to rank the dinosaurs. I think that would be the funnest thing to do. So yes, at some point I'll probably do that. It's probably not going to be for a while. But I would like to turn to books eventually. The harder part with books too is with a comic, you can remember what you've read. You can go back and look at the comics. You can look through pictures to refresh your memory. But with a book, you kind of got to go back and reread the actual book. Otherwise, like I couldn't tell you how I couldn't tell you what kind of hair that Dr. Malcolm had in the book. I couldn't tell you what the kids looked like in the book. So I could reread up about them, but I'd have to read the book to do it. So those rankings would take a lot longer, but always feel free to ask for them because I have a whole long list going and I'd like to get to everything eventually. What was your favorite movie from the Sony Spider-Man list first? Does Venom count? Because if so, I'd pick Venom 1. If you don't want to pick Venom, I don't know, maybe Madam Web, because it's just a funny movie. It's one of the worst things, stupidest fucking things ever made. So that it's definitely not Morbius, and I have not seen Craven. I have not watched it. I will watch it before I do a ranking, but I don't know much about that movie. I thought that looked like one of the dumbest things ever. What do you think of... Oh, this is a real question. What do you think of Supergiant and her absence from the Black Order in the MCU? My answer would be that I think it's a shame that all of the Black Order were so underdeveloped. They were basically just brought in to look like a bunch of weird, spooky, cool-looking aliens for the Avengers to fight. Besides, like, what's his name? Ebony Maw, who gets to have a whole speech, and he's like, "Oh, the glory of Thanos," and Corvus Clave and Proxima Midnight. You kind of felt they had a relationship. That was it. But like, and she had kind of a thing with Black Widow. Besides that, they really were not fleshed out or developed. And the movie version implies that Thanos has a pretty deep relationship with all of them that is going to probably be similar to Gamora's and Nebula's, but it's not explored at all because they don't touch upon any of them. So if she would have been in the movie, it wouldn't have really mattered anyways because she wouldn't have done anything. I'm sure she would have just walked in and been killed pretty quickly, just like everyone else was. I think the reason they chose not to use her was because, like, while the other characters have all these weird shapes, she's kind of didn't look as alien-y, you know, and I don't know if they really cared about this because they probably would have changed it anyways, but just they probably didn't want to reckon with her powers, thought it would be too strong. Anyways, it wouldn't have mattered because they wouldn't have covered her at all in any way. She would have had the same treatment as the rest of them. But it always fucking sucks when you're a huge fan of one character and they bring in characters associated with them and you're like, I'm not asking for much. I just want to see fucking Supergiant, and she doesn't show up. That kind of shit pisses me off like crazy. If you could have one superpower, what would it be? And what would you do with it? For good or bad? The power, that is a tough question. But I've thought about it a lot. And the power that I would want would be the ability. It would not be the power itself. It would be the ability to grant the power of immortality to and from myself and others. Because if you just wish for immortality, you're going to be stuck in like that Twilight Zone escape clause episode where, you know, you're like, oh, I'm immortal. Oh, I got a life sentence in jail or some shit. Or you get buried underneath the earth, or the earth explodes and you're flying through space for infinity, like for all time. No, I don't want any of that. I would like to live forever. I think that'd be awesome to, you know, keep going, watch humanity grow, like just see how far you could go and not have to worry about all the things that kill you in real life, like eating and sleeping and shit like that. But the other problem is you don't want to watch everyone you know get old and die. So I'd want to be able to pick maybe 2-3 people to grant immortality to. It'd be a very select list. You absolutely would be on it, viewers, so don't worry. But I know that they also would not want to live forever, so I would want to be able to take it away from us if things get too bad. What are your top 3 favorite Batman villains? My favorite Batman villain is Hugo Strange. Both the classic mad scientist who creates Monster Men version and the much more later, like, evil psychologist who knows Batman's identity and then goes crazy and wants to become Batman. I love both of those versions so much. I thought he was so cool in Arkham City. The entire game, I thought they did the countdown to whatever the thing at the end of the game was, 5 hours until whatever. I thought, oh, everyone in the city is going to turn into Monster Men, and you're going to have a whole tough villain to fight. No, they just started killing everyone. I was really disappointed by that because I really wanted to see those two married. But later on, Steve Orlando in the Night of the Monster Men arc across all the Batman titles, he did a Hugo Strange, who I absolutely loved because he had both. He was a crazed psychologist who wanted to be Batman and had made these crazed monster people all throughout the city. I absolutely loved it. With my favorite Hugo Strange moment of all time, Batman breaks in. Hugo Strange is sitting there, sitting on a fucking throne of psychology textbooks, dressed as Batman, saying to Batman, "I am the only sane man in Gotham." I loved that moment so much. I think he's an underrated writer. I don't love everything he writes, but I love a lot of what he wrote while he was at DC. I quite liked what he was doing at DC. I hope he comes back someday. Second favorite villain, Lord Deathman. I am such a sucker for weird continuity characters. Lord Deathman first appeared in a Batman manga until Grant Morrison brought him in decades later in Batman Incorporated. In the original comic, he was a guy who his gimmick is whenever he dies, he'll come back to life, but he was just faking it in those old mangas. But in the modern comics, it's that if he dies, he'll come back to life. So he's Lord Deathman. And he is a Japanese villain who fights a Japanese Batman in that arc. I just love it so much. He appears from time to time now. I never want to see him adapted in a movie. I do not really like when they use him that much. I think he should be used very sparingly. They did give me an action figure of him, though, which I appreciated. And third, come on, it's the Joker. If I did not say Joker, I'd be lying. Joker is one of the greatest villains of all time. He's great foil to Batman specifically. He's always fun. And the best thing about him is every writer can write him however the fuck they want, and nobody's going to be able to complain too much, because anything you write in, somebody else will just change it later anyways. Next up, are you planning on making a ranking video of all the characters in the Sony Spider-Man villain universe on how well or poorly they were adapted? Absolutely yes. I'm very excited to. The next one I do after Fox is either going to be Sony Spider-Verse or CW-verse, since people both ask for a lot of them. I'll have to figure out a good way to pick which one. Maybe it's the time to start a Patreon and I can do a fucking poll on that in there. Regarding the 3 C's, how are you so knowledgeable with accuracy with comic characters, or any character for that matter? Well, I make it a habit to try to know as much about every character in Marvel and DC, and sometimes beyond, as I possibly can. I've always gotten really nerdy about things I was really into. Like when I was younger, I fucking loved The Simpsons, and I just tried to know about every character in all of Springfield and beyond. When I got older, that turned into Lost, I got super into. But then, later on, that got replaced with Marvel and DC. For a while, when I read comics, whenever I come across a character I don't know, a character or big element of lore, I'll write it down and I'll look it up later, because I want to know what it was that I had referenced there if I don't know about it. Then if it sounds cool, I'll obviously go read the comics that character's in. If that sounds fucking stupid, I'll probably avoid that comic, but usually it's to read it. So I come into this with a larger scope and knowledge of characters than most people have. But I mean, I don't know everyone. My goal is to eventually, though, know absolutely everything, because I absolutely love comic continuity. When I'm watching a movie or a show adaptation of a comic, I'm pretty much always already taking notes in my head about what is and isn't adapted well from the comics. And I'd always tell people afterwards, oh, this was like this wasn't like this. And I just get this blank stare of, I don't give a fucking shit, stop talking to me. So I decided to purge that out on all of you, and it seems like a lot of people are into that, so that's good. Really, I just have fun talking about this stuff. So the answer is, I know a lot, and what I don't know, I learn about as soon as possible. What are your favorite current ongoing DC runs? My absolute favorite comic coming out from DC right now, if you can call it a comic, is New History of the DC Universe. I was so excited for that to finally come out, because the continuity in DC has been a fucking mess for since 2011 when they did fucking New 52. And even though they tried to bring old stuff back in Rebirth, no writer knew what was and wasn't canon. Everyone was just making it up as it went along. Mark Waid was said, no, I'm not doing that. Here is the continuity. And he's trying to take every era, and I think he's doing a pretty good job of merging it all together so that everything is basically canon. Nothing's taken away unless it has to be. And kind of giving a brief overview. I actually liked his history of the Marvel Universe better. It went more in depth, and I loved the way it would cite everything in the back. But I do really like the New History of the DC Universe. They got rid of Guy Gardner being a cop. I fucking hated that. He's back to his old origin. Wonder Woman's made out of clay again. Thank God for that. Yeah, I look forward to where that's going. Other than that, also by Mark Waid, Justice League Unlimited, I'm really into. I'm really enjoying that. I like the story it's telling. I like that it's actually building towards something that seems interesting with this Legion of Darkseid stuff. It's been a long fucking time since DC's been putting out an arc, like a universe arc that was interesting, and I always think the Justice League should be at the forefront of that. Then Green Lantern by Jeremy Adams, I'm really enjoying. It's Green Lantern has kind of sucked for quite a while. They kept trying to get Hal Jordan out. You know, I liked Grant Morrison's Hal Jordan, but it didn't have the rest of the Green Lantern lore in there. Jeremy Adams has been doing a pretty good job of bringing in all the lore stuff. It's kind of just like a regular comic again. If you're a fan of the old Jeff Johns Green Lantern, I'd encourage you to read this. And then I'd say New Gods by Ram V or Ram 5. I have no idea what his name is. I'm really enjoying that because it's actually, I can tell the guy fucking read old New Gods comics, which a lot of New Gods writers clearly haven't. And instead of just aping what the old comics did or turning it into something randomly new, he seems to be doing a little of taking the idea of using the New Gods to explore these deep human themes and ideas on this huge scale while but doing it for issues that he's interested in, ideas he's interested in, human interest thing he's interested in. Every time they bring in New Gods, I think they're just going to fucking keep changing them to modernize them or some boring shit. He does not seem to be doing that so far, so that one I like quite a bit too because, I mean, they look cool. It seems to be in the spirit of the originals. That's all I'm saying. Other than that, those would be the runs I'm really excited to go pick up every week. Maybe I'm forgetting something. I get a couple other comics, but they fucking suck, so I wouldn't encourage you to read those ones. What franchise is your favorite to talk about and why? Currently, that would be James Gunn's DCU. And that would be because both I like a lot of what he's doing a lot, and I fucking hate a lot of what he's doing a lot. So it gives me a lot to talk about on both sides. But the good outweighs the bad, in my opinion, so far. And because it's really new, it's exciting to think that this could go anywhere. The MCU's gotten in such a fucking rut where you're like, everything that happens, it doesn't matter. You kind of expect any random thing to happen. But with DC, it's still fresh, fun, and exciting. And I hope that it's able to build up a decade of stuff. I'd really like to be able to talk about it for a long time. I'll be really sad if it fizzles out and dies. And after like 10 years of having nothing to talk about with the DCEU bringing in like a total of 5 characters, I'm very glad to already have so many off the bat. Do you actually read these comic character stories before making the worst to best adaptation videos? Or you just read off some wiki? Most of the more well-known characters all have read through either most of or enough of their most important appearances to know them well enough that I can fairly easily know what was different and similar about them while watching the movie. What I'm not able to remember, or what I'm not sure I'm remembering right, or what I just absolutely don't know, I'll supplement with research either online, or if I have to, I'll go back and look through the source material. And if I haven't read it, I'll read it. If I have read it, I'll skim through it. Sometimes, though, and I'm glad to say this is somewhat rarely, but sometimes I'll have a character I have absolutely no memory or knowledge of, like Betty Bates from Creature Commandos. A name I've come across before, but I could not have told you who she was off the top of my head. Incredibly small and incredibly obscure, not even technically really a DC character. Which I'm actually always really excited about, to have a character I don't know, because then I can learn about a new character and potentially have a new one I'll really like and be exposed to comics that somehow I've totally missed. What is your favorite character from the Venomverse? I'm going to say Eddie Brock Venom. I'm already a huge Tom Hardy fan. I was really excited when he got cast. I think they did a pretty good job capturing the 90s spirit of the character. I mean, there's some things I'd do differently, but I mean, there's not that much to pick up from. I didn't really like how they did Carnage. I don't know if the other Sony movies count. I don't like how they did fucking anyone in those. The 2 seconds of She-Venom were pretty cool, but I'd say Eddie Brock. Who is your favorite actor from the animated Spider-Man show? I'm not sure if that's a specific show or all shows, or if that means actor or character, so feel free to let me know in the comments. But if we're saying my favorite actor in the animated Spider-Man shows that there are, what's his name? From Spider-Man the Animated Series. The guy who voiced Prince Eric. Christopher Daniel Barnes, I'd say. I thought he did a great job at Spider-Man. I mean, I'm a little biased because that was my first Spider-Man I really got into. But I really like the voice. You have to constantly listen to him narrating over it, like the entire episode, every episode. So you need a voice that is nice to listen to and isn't annoying. A lot of subsequent Spider-Mans after that oftentimes make him sound a lot younger, which I get because he's a teenager in most adaptations, but he's Spider-Man, not Spider-Boy. So I do like a guy who sounds a little bit older while sounding a little younger at the same time. Next question. Do you prefer Marvel or DC? This is the kind of question that can start fights, but I very much prefer DC. I love Marvel too. I have absolutely no complaints about it. Why I like DC more? I like the style of heroes more. They're on average a lot more powerful and have much crazier stories and continuity. Yeah, the continuity is a big part of it because DC's continuity is so messy, convoluted, and weird, stretching all the way back to the 40s. Well, yeah, Marvel's continuity stretches back to the 40s too, but they don't use most of that stuff. It basically starts in the 60s. Also, Marvel's continuity is on average a lot cleaner. You've got weird stuff like when Onslaught destroys everything and they have to remake the universe and all that. But DC is a weirdly organized mess. I think that's what I'd say. Every era is very organized. Their multiverse is a little more organized, even though it's constantly shifting and constantly changing. That kind of like mixture of absolute chaos and writers coming in and cleaning it up all the time, I find very enjoyable. Plus, they've got the JSA, and that's my absolute favorite super team of all time, so that helps quite a bit as well. Next up, are you an Image fan? Yeah, I'm an Image fan. I don't buy every comic that comes out, but that's because of the reason why I like Image. I like that it's a place where writers can go to publish whatever random ass ideas that they have, if Image thinks that they'll, be able to make money off of it, without it having to be at the big two of Marvel and DC. Like, the industry used to be a lot more dependent on Marvel and DC, and now with companies like Image and other companies that have come up, there's a lot more opportunities if you want to get a comic published to go outside of just the whoever happens to be in charge of those companies at the time, and so that you aren't forced to just do basically superhero stories forever, because I love superheroes. They're my absolute favorite thing for comics. I basically only buy superhero comics for the most part, but the idea that a medium that's word and pictures, like that's what it is at its core, is completely dominated by superheroes when only a fraction of people actually like them is absolutely absurd. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Way back in the day, you used to have cowboy stories, horror stories, and companies like Image are able to bring that back. Oh, yeah, and I should say, I'm a huge fan of Invincible, Walking Dead. I like Robert Kirkman's carved out his own area there. I liked what all the writers who created Image back in the day were able to come up with, all those bizarre-ass 90s superhero comics. I think those were really cool. Most of them have left, Jim Lee and Layfield and stuff, but, it's interesting. I think I'm fizzling out, so let's move on. Have you ever played any superhero games? And if so, which was your favorite? Yes, I will play pretty much any superhero game that comes out. I always love seeing how those kinds of stories are adapted into video game format. I think they work really well for that because, superheroes are fighting in action, so I think they translate into video games really well. I love the Arkham games. Those are sweet. The Spider-Man game I liked quite a bit. Some of the writing not so much, but the gameplay I thought was super fun. Like a lot of Spider-Man games. It's really fun to swing around the city. With Batman, it's really fun to grapple around. I've been waiting for them to make a friggin' Superman game forever, and don't say I already got one. But I'd have to say my absolute favorite superhero game is easily and without question Ultimate Alliance 1. That game's got like 50 characters you can play as. It does a really good job of running you through the entire Marvel universe and using as many characters as it possibly can. It's got some of the coolest fucking cinematics I've ever seen for Marvel stuff. Like, the MCU has not achieved the opening of Ultimate Alliance 1. And one of the main reasons I was somewhat disappointed by their portrayal of Galactus was how fucking cool he was in Ultimate Alliance 1 when you see him... I think he's either attacking the Skrull or Shi'ar homeworld. I don't remember. It's one of the two. But that clip is so goddamn cool that it's sadly gave the new movies version a handicap. If you want to learn about Marvel Comics and you don't know a lot, go play Ultimate Alliance 1. By the end of that game, you will be able to bullshit your way through conversations that you know more than you actually do. But the best thing about that game is it's made for 4 players. So if you've got, friends, which is rare for us in the, nerd community, but if you do have real life friends and you get a copy, all 4 of you play together, it's fucking awesome. It's so much fun. Sadly, Ultimate Alliance 2, even though I like it okay, the third act is garbage. It was not able to live up to the first one, even though you can play as the Juggernaut. And Ultimate Alliance 3, though I think the roster's pretty good. The game itself, if you want to unlock costumes, they make you fucking replay the same levels over and over and over. It's just one of the biggest slogs to get through that game. It's completely uneven. Some levels are really fun, some are not. It sadly did not live up to that first one. And that's a real shame. All right. Do you think Ben Reilly was originally intended to end the way they had him end after the whole clone mess back in the day? Another real question, and the answer I would give is no. I think they were just making shit up as they went along, and it led to all kinds of reveals and retcons that ended in them just saying fuck it and killing Ben off to clean house in this convoluted mess of a storyline that a lot of fans were fighting against in the time. You can go back and read those now, and they seem all fine and clean, but there were a lot of people who hated all that clone shit as it was coming out. I mean, you shouldn't even for 1 second try to tell fans that Peter was the clone all along. That is one of the worst choices of all time. Whether they planned long-term that wouldn't be the case, or what I believe, which is they were like, oh shit, that was a terrible idea, let's retcon it. I think it's a real shame that they treated Ben that way because he is still such a popular character. He's had toys and merch all the time that he wasn't alive after that. Like, he's just got a weird, cool costume, and it's really cool to have this clone of Peter Parker out there doing his own thing. I like messier elements of continuity, and a character like that you can completely remove from Peter's story, so that if you're not into that, you don't have to have him around. But if you are into that, you can go read basically a second Spider-Man story. It's really cool. Now, a lot of people don't like Dan Slott. I'm not one of them. I like his writing most of the time. I really enjoyed most of his Spider-Man writing, but I really, really hated what he did with Ben Reilly in his clone conspiracy arc. That is not the way I would have brought the character back in any way. And I know that they've tried to kind of like even him out over time, but that was just straight up character assassination in my opinion, which was a real shame. I do think that using Jackal and Ben Reilly in a MCU movie would be absolutely awesome. I'd love to see... I mean, Jackal's one of my favorite villains. I love the idea of this pretty relatively normal scientist guy who dresses up in a goddamn green, weird, hairy Jackal uniform and just starts cloning people because he's fallen in love with one of his students. It's absolutely... you think Green Goblin's crazy, but Jackal, I just think he's out of his fucking mind. What was I even saying? Oh, yeah. They got to get Ben. I think that they should have a Ben Reilly arc in the MCU. I think that'd be really cool. Because the Ben Reilly we got over in Spider-Verse, that's some shit they just completely made up. That's not the story at all. Maybe they'll explore him more and we can see more about that, and that could be something, but with the tone of that movie, I don't think they really care that much. But it also doesn't seem like that's their immediate plan for the MCU, since they're just going to have Spider-Man and Hulk, or Spider-Man and Wolverine fight the Hulk and Mr. Negative or some shit. But maybe they'll lay the seeds for a clone conspiracy movie, or clone saga movie. I think that would be pretty awesome. Sadly, they don't have a Gwen Stacy to clone, though, so I don't really know what the triggering point would be for that, unless they introduce and kill Gwen Stacy in one movie. However, if you did a third Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movie, I think it'd be really interesting for him to clone Gwen Stacy in that, and then get a clone of that Peter Parker. I think that'd be pretty cool. I'm so surprised they haven't made that movie yet. All right, you can't ask comic questions because you get me rambling. So let's move on. Have you played Marvel Rivals or Injustice? If so, which is your favorite to play, and which characters do you like to play as? I have played both. I played a shitload of Injustice. I have played a lot of that when those came out. I never got good at either of them. I'm not that good at video games, especially not multiplayer video games. I'm absolutely shit at Marvel Rivals, but I've played a good amount of it. So usually I just pick whoever my favorite characters are and play them. So in Rivals, I was very excited for Reed Richards to finally come out, and when he did, I played the heck out of him. I really enjoy him. I really like punching people from afar. I like how they did his powers because an absolute dipshit like me can play him for the most part. I also enjoyed playing as Mantis. I liked a lot. Captain America. Storm was pretty fun. I'm forgetting somebody. I really wanted to play as Adam Warlock, but I'm too much of a bad gamer to be able to handle whatever he was doing. Though it was a shame because I was really excited that he was in there and he was more like the comics. It wasn't just MCU Adam Warlock. So if you ever come across some absolute moron playing those characters specifically who seems like he doesn't know what the hell he's doing and he's causing your entire team to lose, that very well may be me. For Injustice 1, I remember I really liked Hawkgirl, Black Adam. In both games, I liked Black Adam. Lobo, I was really excited about. I enjoyed playing him. In Injustice 2, I really liked playing as Captain Cold. Red Hood was probably my favorite. And I liked playing as Power Girl, too. The Supergirl with the Power Girl skin. Oh, and the Jay Garrick. I liked that as well. I really liked how they had the alternate skin so you could play as a whole new character, but with the exact same moveset. And then they gave him a new voice and lines and everything. I thought that was very cool. Give me an Injustice 3. I'm very eager to see where that story goes. I liked the ending of that one quite a bit. All right. What comic made you fall in love with them? So that would probably be both, because I read these around the same time. Sin City by Frank Miller and Johnny the Homicidal Maniac / Squee, those comics by Jonan Vasquez. I'd read plenty of comics before, but those were the ones that made me really fall in love with like the medium of comics, like the art on the page, the words, the way everything was laid out. I was just absolutely inspired by them. Like, I'd been drawing comics and stuff before, like every kid does, but I started getting a little more serious about drawing and stuff after that. I was incredibly inspired by both of those. The black and white, too. Like, I hadn't read a lot of manga at that point, so those were the comics that made me think black and white can look fucking cool. Before that, I think, and people are going to hit me for this, but it would be Dark Knight Strikes Again was one of the comics that really made me fall in love with it, another Frank Miller one. I read that before I ever read Dark Knight Returns, and that is sacrilege, I know. But I think Dark Knight Strikes Again gets a really bad rep. That is one of the most, like, weird, experimental, fun things I've ever read, with some of the craziest crap I've ever seen on a page. Like, Frank Miller just slamming inks down, slamming story down, not giving a fuck about anything. And you get such awesome versions of characters like Plastic Man and the Atom. Flash is really cool in there. Question I liked a lot. Just everyone was so cool in there. Batman's even more grizzled. Now, Dark Knight Returns is a better story, a better Batman story, a better story overall, more true to the themes of the character in the universe. But I really fell in love with the, like the writing. You know, you can fall in love with writing in anything. Like, good writing in a comic book or movie, who cares? It's all the same. But I really became enamored by what you can do with art with those three comics. Next question. Your favorite comic run? That is an incredibly difficult question. I think I'm going to go with All-Star Squadron by Roy Thomas, which was a comic. Did I reference that one already? I don't remember. A comic where they took all the heroes of DC's golden age of their, like, 1940s time period from real life, all the characters who were actually published there, and characters who had been, like, retconned to exist back there. And also characters DC had acquired later on, like Quality and and Fawcett and stuff like that, and just took all of them, characters who were published back then, and put them all on one gigantic, huge-ass team of every wartime superhero under the orders of Franklin Roosevelt, and just called them the All-Star Squadron. And you get all these cool lineups of like 50 superheroes all standing together. You had a core team of Liberty Bell, Jesse Quick, Firebrand, and a few others. But then you'd always have other characters guest star in all the time, like Phantom Lady or Plastic Man was in a bit, all this shit like that. Yeah, I really like it because when we think back on DC's golden age, like in modern JSA, or when people call back to all these classic DC heroes, they're not thinking of those original comics, really, because a lot of the stuff in there's not a lot of continuity in those usually. It's just like, characters doing, or, just old golden age stories, or just like this guy runs off and fights a villain. Besides like the JSA and a couple other instances, there's not like there's a lot of team-ups back then for real. When we think of DC's fleshed out golden age, everyone is thinking of Royce Thomas's work on All-Star Squadron and Young All-Stars and stuff like that. The other cool thing was that originally All-Star Squadron is based on Earth 2 specifically, but then when they merged Earth 1 and 2 together, he was able to kind of keep it within continuity. I think if he had not been writing All-Star Squadron at the time, I think that they would have wiped Jay Garrick and all those classic heroes from continuity like they did at New 52, because soon after they just threw the JSA into limbo anyways. Like there were a lot of people at the company who seemed to not want to use them. So I think that comic's really cool. I really enjoy it. If you haven't read it, go back and give it a read. It's pretty cool. And a lot of modern stories will loosely call back to that, with the writers probably not even realizing they are. Next question. How long have you been interested in superhero media? I have been interested in superhero media for as long as I have memories, basically. One of my earliest memories is deciding that I was not going to go outside and play with friends on a birthday, because I'd rather stay inside alone, completely alone, and play with this cool Wolverine action figure I'd just gotten as a present. I have no idea how old I was. It had to be... I think it was before kindergarten. Yeah, it was before kindergarten. I can't remember any of those friends. I can't remember what my house looked like. I can't remember anything, but I do vividly remember that the toy had retractable claws that when you'd push them in, if you put them to the side, they'd like hook on a little thing, and then if you pushed in, they'd come back out, and I thought that was fucking awesome. So I have always been interested in superhero media. How do you know so much about specific characters in comics? Have you just read that many comics to where there isn't a character you don't know? I wish. There are a lot of characters in Marvel and DC, and a lot of characters outside of them. I do not know every single character. I referenced earlier I came across Betty Bates, and I was not really familiar with her. However, I would say that I know the vast majority of characters. And I know all the real characters, all the important characters, but there are a lot of obscure characters that I'll either have only seen once or twice and forgotten about, or just have not even met. But there are a lot of characters that I like a lot too, and I just know off the top of my head. It really depends. There are characters I've read pretty much every appearance of. Like, I've read just about, I think I've read every JSA comic or major feature that there's ever been. There may be one or two hidden in there somewhere I haven't read, but I made the effort to read all of them. Then there'll be characters I know well. I've seen plenty of, like, Rocket Raccoon, but I've actually somehow, I don't know how, never went and read his his original appearances. I don't know why. I'll have to rectify that now that I've thought about it, but, like, that's an example. I've seen plenty of him, you know, in, like, Guardians of the Galaxy, the comics from around Annihilation and stuff like that when they brought him back in. And I've seen him since then, but, like, his original appearance, I've read him. I know all the shit, you know, but I haven't actually, like, actually read those specific comics. And then there'll be characters who I come across, and I'm just like, I have no idea who this was. What the most recent example, what was his name? Got it written down here. Yeah, I was reading Justice League Unlimited, and a big wolf guy jumps in called Kadajos, whatever, however you say it. And I'm like, how have I never heard of this guy? I look him up online. I have heard of him. I've read him in 2 other comics written by the same author just earlier this year. So he just apparently slipped my mind. I will not forget him now, but sometimes that happens where I actually have seen a character and I just completely forget about them. My memory is not as good as it may sound from these videos, but I do have a shitload of knowledge about a shitload of characters. I do have to say it is very rare that a, like, classic character, I'll see them and I won't know who they are. But when I do get the opportunity to learn about a new character, sometimes I come across continuity that leads me to one of my newest favorite elements of lore, and I have a whole batch of new comics to read, some obscure, weird little run that I've never heard of, and it's really fun to come across those. Sadly, the movie people don't use those characters that often, but I'm always impressed when they do use something that I'm not familiar with, like I said, with Betty Bates. What are your favorite comics? I got asked that one a lot, so I'll do a top 5 list for that one as well. If I had to pick a top 5 now, it would be League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Crisis on Infinite Earths, Infinite Crisis, Sin City, and The Infinity Gauntlet. I think those are probably the 5 comics that have still endured the test of time for me the most. I'm a huge fan of event comics, as you can tell. I think it's a real shame that the art of the event has been completely lost recently. Dark Crisis was one of the worst things I have ever read in my entire life. I thought that was such a boring piece of shit. The one just before that, I don't even remember what it was called. Absolute Power sucked. I hated that event too. Like, what I like about those Crisis and Infinite Crisis and Infinity Gauntlet, they had tie-ins and shit, sure. You don't have to read a single one to get the story. If you just grab the graphic novel of any of those, you've got everything that matters. And you're not going to miss all the shit. A character is not going to go, oh, I got to go grab that thing with a little continue that in some garbage shit miniseries that you don't care about at all. It's awful. What I like in an event, I want it to star everyone. I want everyone there. I don't want to feel like I've got to go read 10 other comics by some other, like, first published work writer who I do not care about. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I just absolutely love. I think it's Alan Moore's coolest work. Kevin O'Neill's art is so awesome in there. I really like having, you know, the themes of the comic kind of matching the kind of, like, questionable morals of the time without being, like, too judgmental about them. They're just exploring these ideas. I think it's a really fun, interesting comic. And as it creeps closer to the modern day, you get a lot of cameos and references that you would not expect, including ones that Alan Moore has to not use the name of to stop from being sued. Sin City, I already said, it's just fucking cool. It's just a cool comic. And then Infinity Gauntlet, I think I said before, it's this mixture between superhero pop and like weird philosophizing that I just love so much. There's a reason it's such a beloved comic with everybody. Can you do a comparison between Flashpoint Paradox through Justice League Dark Apocalypse War? Hell yes, I can. That's what I'd really like to do. And it'd be really interesting because I could also compare the pre and post New 52 versions of characters, since you get both of them in that first movie. I think it's really interesting the way that universe grew out. I really liked Flashpoint Paradox, but I absolutely hated Justice League War and Throne for Atlantis. But a lot of the stories after that I liked quite a bit. And then Apocalypse War, I liked that it was actually an apocalypse. I'd also do a follow-up for the Tomorrowverse after that, where I liked some of the movies, but they did not stick the landing on that thing, in my opinion. So yeah, I'll do it for both eventually. I'll just need to find the time. What is your favorite DC animated movie and TV show, and why? Animated show, Batman the Brave and the Bold, where it was just so fun to watch every episode and see what random-ass character they were going to team up with next. I really liked the Silver Age style of the show. I liked they picked a huge roster of characters. It was really fun to see how many they'd choose from. That Batman voice was iconic. And in my opinion, it has one of the greatest finales in all of superhero history. Anyways, favorite cartoon animated movie? Probably Flashpoint Paradox, which I thought was better than Flashpoint. Even though I'm a big Jeff Johns fan, I do not really like Flashpoint that much. I think it's kind of stupid. Maybe that's because I bought all the tie-ins like a fucking moron, but I think it does a better job at Flashpoint than the comic does. Or Justice League Gods and Monsters, I liked quite a bit. I liked that they made up their completely own, like, really unhappy version of the DC universe. I would have liked to see more stories based there. What is your favorite Arkham game? Easily Arkham City, no questions. Arkham Asylum's a lot of fun, but man, you really feel constrained as Batman when you're walking through a building all the time, you know? Arkham City took what already worked and put it on a scope of what every Batman fan or every fan ever has wanted to see out of a video game. Like the feeling that you can just go all around Gotham, that you can jump in on random thugs, that like all that stuff is just so awesome. And I really liked how they adapt the villains in that series, where they're like, it's like issue 700 of Batman. Like they all have established relationships. Batman already knows all of them. So you feel like you're just jumping in on a random comic. But the character designs being so incredibly over the top and silly looking while being pretty gritty and grounded, I think is really cool. That's something that you really lose in Arkham Knight when it decides to go more realistic, in my opinion. I think Arkham City is the definitive Arkham game. Like when you're fighting, when you don't know that you're about to fight Solomon Grundy, that's one of the coolest moments ever. I really enjoy that. I won't say too much just in case you haven't beaten the game, but because there are some things you wouldn't want to know, but it's definitely, I'd play that whole series if I were you, if you haven't. All right. How are you doing? Hope you're doing good. I'm doing okay. I'm rambling my way through this like an absolute moron. I'm not really used to doing an interview like this, so I'm sure I'm coming off like a fucking weird, senile old guy trying to half remember some story from when he was from when he was a little kid, and all his grandkids are like, shut the fuck up, let me play Xbox. But hopefully I'm giving you something you need. You may be able to hear I've just gotten over being sick. I'm still a little sick, which sucks ass. One of the reasons I've been getting less shit out to you. And basically just want to get more stuff out to you, but never enough time. Will you do best to worst characters when, if, Beyond the Spider-Verse and The Batman Part 2 finally drop? Yes, I'm very excited to do those, especially Spider-Verse, because I get to do a whole multiverse of characters and compare them, because they take so many from the comics, and then they take so many liberties with them and keep a lot of things the same. Batman is one people have been asking for a lot, so I'll have to do that pretty soon. I'm probably not going to be able to wait until both those movies come out to do the previous ones, even though, I'd like to use the hype of them to do videos about that, because it seems like they're okay to let those movies come out like 10 decades after the first ones did. So absolutely very excited for that. We'll do it when I have time. What are your top 5 most and least favorite comic book movies? I'll let you know, I thought about this one ahead of time. I knew I couldn't do this off the seat of my pants. So I'd say my favorite comic movies, in no particular order, would be Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Sin City, Dread, the one with Carl Urban, not the Stallone one, Avengers 1, and then X-Men Days of Futures Past. For Avengers and X-Men, since they're the only, like, normal superhero ones, I think those two movies are the closest we've ever gotten to, like, the scope and insanity of superhero comics. I think Infinity War comes pretty close too, but it's a little too movie-y, if that makes sense. I think Avengers' goal was to bring comics to life on the screen, and it's actually a fairly good adaptation of the actual way the Avengers came together, which I appreciate. Days of Futures Past I really loved because I'd pretty much given up on X-Men at that point. I did not like First Class. Wolverine Origins was god-awful. Like, it seemed like the franchise was dead. Then along comes this movie and somehow introduces time travel in a way that was actually pretty, like, people accepted, which surprised me. And found a way to rescue a lot of those prequel characters for me to make me actually like them quite a bit, and gave me back all the classic actors. What Disney is trying to do now, X-Men First Class already did, and better than Disney's ever going to be able to do it, because it was the actual characters, not some copy of it. So I thought that was really awesome and fun. Then Sin City, I'd read the comics already, you know, and so that was fucking awesome to watch because it brings it to life so well. They respected it so much and tried to do it visually. The actors are so good. It's awesome. Dredd, even though it's not as silly as the Judge Dredd comics, which is fine with me, it does such a good job of, like, just a day in the life of Dredd. Like, he does this entire movie, does the craziest shit you've ever seen, and at the end he's like, well, that was another Tuesday. Like, that's just how it is. Like, if a fucking judge actually notices the crime you're doing, you are fucked. He will pursue you all the way through. And then Scott Pilgrim, same thing. They just brought the comic to life so much. Now, I'd seen the comic before, or I'd seen the movie before I read the comics for that one. But it's just awesome. I wish more comic movies would embrace trying to, like, bring the weirdness of it to life. Like, there's only a few parts they really drastically change, and the entire third act, of course, because the last volume hadn't come out yet, because Brian Lee O'Malley takes forever to write shit. Yeah, it's just a good movie. It's just cool. My least favorites, though. Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, one of my most hated movies ever. I fucking hate that Batman so much. When I'm sitting there in theaters and Batman starts running people over, pulls out a fucking machine gun and starts gunning them down in his Batmobile, Superman, like, I actually liked Man of Steel quite a bit, but God, I hated Superman in that sequel. I just hate every second of that movie. There is almost nothing I like about that movie. I know it has some huge fans, and I can understand why, because it's got this whole cool, dark atmosphere, but for me, I fucking hate that movie. Second, I'm going to go Jonah Hex. For God knows what reason, I saw Jonah Hex in theaters. That was one of the worst experiences of my entire movie-going life. That movie is fucking stupid. Nothing like the comics. Has that awful part where they have Lance Reddick fucking simp for Jonah Hex fighting in this as for the Confederates, just doing that whole, I know that you weren't into slavery, Jonah Hex, you just didn't like the government telling you what to do. It's just fucking awful. Oh God, it's just awful. Like, just don't even do that. Just do Jonah Hex. He's not a good guy or a bad guy. He's Jonah Hex. You don't need to have, like, some weird shit where you justify who he is. He is who he is. Not everyone who fought for the Confederates was a fucking slave owner. The other thing is they have him able to talk to the fucking dead. I just hate that comic. Or I hate that movie so much. Third, I just watched it a few weeks ago to do the ranking videos, but X-Men Dark Phoenix. That movie fucking sucked. I already hated Apocalypse, but Dark Phoenix is one of the dumbest things I have ever watched in my entire life. I thought I'd seen bad superhero movies, but Dark Phoenix, that franchise deserves to be dead. As much as I love a lot of those actors, I never want to see any of them again. 4, I'm going to go Thor, Love and Thunder. I fucking hate that movie. From the opening credits when Korg's like, yeah, Thor did this, and then this guy died, and this guy, and who's that? And it shows the Warriors 3 dying. I checked out of that movie immediately, because I'm like, well, this movie doesn't give a fuck about what I care about. They're just going to replace everyone with Korg even further. And then, oh my God, that scene where Jane Foster and Valkyrie are bobbing their heads to that fucking little what little stereo thing she pulls out. It's one of the cringiest movies ever. It's adapting one of the coolest modern store arcs with Gore the God Butcher. I mean, a fucking shitload of people have watched my video breaking down why Gore is fucking awful, so you've probably heard me complain about it enough. And then my fifth most hated superhero or comic movie is Superman 3. I fucking hate Superman 3. Everyone says Superman 4 is the worst one. No. At least in Superman 4, he fights a fucking villain, even if it's a made-up villain. In Superman 3, he fights fucking Richard Pryor. It's the dumbest shit I've ever watched. You've got that stupid opening comedy sequence. You've got, God, what's even in that movie? You've got, you have Superman go evil, which is all interesting, and then that's over within 2 seconds. You've got Richard Pryor, I don't know why, playing with skis on top of a fucking building and then going, "Oh, Mr. Luthor, I can't ski." Oh, and he falls off a building, falls like all the way from a skyscraper and just lands on the fucking sidewalk. What is this shit? And he's just fine. The cover is him holding fucking Richard Pryor. I hate that movie with every fiber of my being. I'd watch Superman 4 20 times in a row instead of watching Superman 3 one more time. I hate that movie. All right, let's move on and calm down. How long have you been reading comics? Didn't I already answer this? I don't know. But if not, comic strips since I was a little kid. I really liked the newspaper comic strips. I liked checking out from the library, Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes. I had, my dad had like a little teeny long box of some old ass comics. I cannot tell you what they were. They weren't that old. He like everyone else, had his mom throw away his fucking, Amazing Fantasy 15 and fucking Fantastic Four #1 and shit when he was at summer camp, so he claims. So that's always been bitter for him. He had some stuff that must have been, oh God, I don't even know what it was. I don't remember it that well. I remember there was a Wild Dog comic. It was, I don't know what it was. And then some like Alien comics, so totally random collection. And then a lot of weird indie comics with a lot of naked chicks in them, so, and then horrible violence, so that's always fun. How many comics are in your collection? Well, compared to a normal person, an absolutely insane amount, because I've got shelves and boxes of graphic novels from Marvel, DC, and others. But compared to a hardcore, like, collector, I've got fucking nothing. I've only got a measly, 6 or 7 long boxes worth of issues. Most of those not worth anything. I'm not the guy who's going to be able to pull out, all these classic runs, all, nicely protected and everything like that. I am a hardcore reader, and I will buy a lot of stuff. If I'm at especially a used bookstore, I'll buy quite a few graphic novels. If you drop me off in a comic shop, I will dig through issues looking for specific ones that I'm into, but they're not going to be really, really old runs. It'll be like when I hunted down all the who's who in DC, because I really love those. Or if there's a run I really love, I want all the I have the graphic novels of Seven Soldiers, but I'd like all the individual issues of it, shit like that. Or old All-Star Squadrons, that might be the oldest I'd go. I'm not going to invest hundreds of dollars into some old Silver Age or Golden Age comic, though I was tempted to get an issue of Green Turtle I saw once for it was $300. I was really tempted to give it a try, but I talked myself out of it, because that would be fucking awesome to have. So yeah, I've got a fuckload. I've got hundreds, if not close to 1,000, maybe even over, maybe even multi-thousand. I've never counted, but it's whatever you're imagining looking like, it's probably nothing. Now, action figures, on the other hand, dear fucking God, do I have a lot of fucking action figures. Will you use the 3 C's method on comic book media outside of Marvel and DC, with examples given such as TMNT, Hellboy, and The Mask? Yes, absolutely. So far, because I'm actually pretty early in this whole YouTube thing, I haven't gotten to a lot of weird deep cut ones. All of the Ninja Turtle movies, both the new ones and then the old classic ones, I think would be a lot of fun. Hellboy would be incredibly fun to do, because there are some incredibly major changes in those ones. I have not seen either of the 2 Hellboy reboots, so I don't know how many characters are actually in those. I'll give those a watch, even though I've heard nothing but negatives. I love the old Hellboys, so I was kind of reluctant to watch the new ones. But definitely those ones. The Mask would be a really fun one, too. I don't know if there's enough characters in there to really make a whole video of, but I could make a shortened one, I think. I think that would be a lot of fun. Give me an excuse to read through all those, too, because I've never read that. But yeah, the eventual long-term plan is to just do an adaptation ranking of every single comic adaptation there's ever been, because it's fun. I really enjoy doing it. You guys seem to like it, so I'll keep going until enough of you tell me to stop. Yeah, I think I'm going to start a Patreon soon where I can put up a poll where you can pitch shit, and then I'll put up a poll of what to do next, because I'd like to get a sense of what you want more, so I'm not just doing shit nobody cares about. So we'll see how that goes. Are games and TV on the table for rankings? Absolutely they are. Same thing. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s one I really want to do. CW's one I'm going to do soon. The Netflix Marvel shows. Justice League and Justice League Unlimited I think would be a lot of fun. Video games, everyone wants me to do Marvel Rivals, so I'll have to do that one, even though I'll have to play quite a bit of that game in order to get a sense for all the characters, so I'm going to be losing a lot of battles. So yeah, if there's one you want to see, let me know below. I've got a whole list of shit already built up. I will add it to the list and get to it eventually. I am very excited they have that new Silent Hill movie coming out that's just looks like it's going to poorly adapt Silent Hill 2. I'm very excited to do that one because I'm a huge fan of that game. We'll see how that goes. What comic run would you want to see adapted, and who would you want to handle the project? I've already said a few characters and stuff I want to see adapted. One thing that I'm surprised they have not done yet is the Fourth World, like Jack Kirby's Fourth World, all the New Gods comics. Like, I feel like that's just so ripe for an adaptation because the story is so big and epic. It seems like they always just want to introduce New Gods characters in other projects. I don't know why, because they're their own characters. I think everyone would love to watch that movie. If I were going to choose a director who I wanted to do a New Gods movie, I think I'd go James Wan. I hated Aquaman in the Lost Kingdom. I didn't actually like Aquaman that much. But he took what was one of the crappiest Aquamans ever and turned him into a serviceable Aquaman. You can tell that if it would have been up to him, he would have casted Patrick Wilson as Aquaman instead, because he put him in as Orm because he looks more like Aquaman. He seems to like to stay true to the source material to a point while putting his own style in. And I think that his, like, if you look at like the Conjuring movies, like his light to dark, like the good Christian values against the evils of all these demons and shit, I think that he would be able to do a pretty good job with Apocalypse, like the horror aspects of Apocalypse and then the good godlike aspects of New Genesis. I think so, though I worry that he would not be able to resist turning Desaad into an actual monster, which I don't want. I just want Guy Desaad, greasy creep Desaad. But that's the one that comes to mind. I'm sure there's other ones, but that's what I got. What is the comic/movie that hooked you on Marvel/DC? For Marvel movies, I would say it was all of them coming out so close together, of Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Hulk, Daredevil, Blade, X-Men. Those all coming out together just made Marvel seem really fucking cool. Like, it had a lot to work with. As much as I like the MCU, I feel like they really got to start focusing on the individual characters again, like they did originally and like they did then, because it makes Marvel seem so rich and interesting. They got to just do a movie crossing over all those. Like, we don't need any of the MCU movie characters for Secret Wars. Just treat it as if all those were based on one world, and I think that would be awesome. For DC, for movies, if I was not a fan of DC Comics, there is no movie that would have made me hooked on DC. They have done such a bad job with their movies. Dark Knight makes me a huge fan of Batman, if I'd never heard of him before for some reason. But, like, I do not blame all the people out there who think DC sucks, who don't read comics, like, or watch cartoons. What reason would you have to think it was cool? For comics, Infinity Gauntlet made me fall in love with Marvel. I think that... because I'd loved the old Spider-Man comics, but those made me fall in love with Spider-Man. Infinity Gauntlet is when I got really serious about Marvel, because I'd read, like, Ultimates, but that's the Ultimate Universe. I think I'd read Civil War by that point, and I liked it a lot. But Infinity Gauntlet really showed me what the Marvel Universe can be, because you see beyond just the heroes. They get just about everything in there. It's such an awesome comic. For DC... honestly, again, probably Dark Knight Strikes Again. They had so many different characters in there that I'd never heard of when I read that when I was pretty... I don't remember how old I was, but I had not heard of, like, Plastic Man. I didn't really know the Atom that well. Like, I just didn't know the lore of DC that well, and that made it seem so big and interesting that I just wanted to read more. It just seemed so cool. So after I read that comic, I was very interested in learning more about these characters, and I started grabbing anything that I could find. All right. What's your most, it's not well adapted, but I'm glad they changed it character? I think that everyone's going to agree that that's Mr. Freeze, because before Batman the Animated Series, Mr. Freeze was not the Mr. Freeze you all know and love. He didn't look all fucking badass and cool like that. He didn't have his whole story with Nora Freeze that gives him so much character. Like, you know, you've got a lot of guys who make cold, you know, as their gimmick. But that specific story of him trying to cure his wife, heart being cold, you know, so he doesn't care what he's doing anymore, and giving them that awesome look, like just completely reinvented the character in a way where everyone just pretends he was always that way because it's so good. So that character specifically is a testament to, as much as I say you got to adapt things well, if they'd adapt Mr. Freeze well in there, he would not be a popular character. Can you pretty please help me with a reading list? This is the last question. It was actually asked earlier in it, but I saved it for last because it's a big question. So I'm assuming that you're a complete newbie to comics. You're looking to get in. I don't know what you've read, person who asked, but if I was going to say, hey, you person who's interested in superheroes but doesn't know anything about them, where should you start? As I said before, I think out of continuity ones are one of the best places to start. So I would hand you probably Kingdom Come, which is a future world bordering on dystopia that will give you a sense of the scope of these universes without you needing to know much of anything except the basics of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. There's other comics like Injustice has gotten really popular in the modern day as like a dark DC story, but like it doesn't actually teach you much about the core principles of the characters because everything's so different, you know. So Kingdom Come, if you read that, that's written by people who absolutely love these characters, specifically their Silver Age renditions, which is their purest renditions in my opinion, and then contrasts it against like the 90s heroes who had just come before that movie or that comic was written. I just think it does a really good job of taking those Silver Age ideals and then challenging them really hard too. So you learn more than you realize while reading a comic like that. Next up, I'd say if you somehow haven't, go read Batman The Dark Knight Returns because it's one of the most famous DC comics ever made. Dark Knight Returns really modern, like the modern version of Batman stems from Dark Knight Returns where he's the biggest badass of all time. The modern version, I'd say, is a mix between Dark Knight Returns and Adam West Batman. But what the fuck was I even saying? Yeah, just go read it. It's just a good comic. You'll like it. If you've got the balls for it, go follow it up with Dark Knight Strikes Again. But that comic ain't for everybody. Next, in the vein of Kingdom Come, I'd encourage you to read DC The New Frontier, which is a Silver Age story based in the actual Silver Age that does a run-through of all the main characters, but I mean, you probably know all the main characters okay. What it also does is runs through a lot of more obscure DC characters, like the Challengers of the Unknown and stuff like that. And so you'll get a pretty good sense of a lot of more obscure things. Same with Kingdom Come. But of a lot of just like what DC looks like beyond just Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and the Justice League. And it's a really good comic with incredible art. Then I'd encourage you to read Superman Red Sun and All-Star Superman, which are two very, very different Superman stories. But, like, Superman's the main character of DC Comics, you know. So, like, you want to know him. And I feel like those two stories take two really different paths to making sure you know Superman. All-Star Superman gives you a really, like, epic Silver Age Superman. A lot of these stories are Silver Age wanking, just so you know. But the Silver Age is really cool. Like, just like the best Superman ever. Like, he's just the most good guy. And it goes through a lot of his lore. You can really tell it's one of the things James Gunn was really inspired by with the new movie, even though I don't think he understood it at all. But then Red Sun, Superman Red Sun, is a story where Superman lands in the Soviet Union and learns their way instead of the truth, justice, and the American way of landing in Kansas. And it's not a happy story. Like, Superman learns some ideals and philosophies that really go against what the character stands for, but he is still Superman. You really see, by seeing how he's wrong, you see what makes Superman so special and what of him still exists in this other world where he's raised this way. You also get a lot of really cool appearances by other major DC characters. If you have not read those, I 100% encourage you to. And then the last DC comic I'm going to hand you is Justice, which is basically Challenge of the Super Friends done in a prestige format with beautiful art and like really artsy writing. You will learn about all the major heroes and all the major villains, and you'll get glimpses of all these side characters. You're going to learn a lot by the end of that comic. Now for Marvel, I'm going to give you Marvels, which is you follow the history of the Marvel Universe from the Golden Age to the end of the Silver Age through the eyes of a photojournalist who's lived through all of it. It's also painted by Alex Ross, just like Kingdom Come is. And so it's got this really realistic style, but the characters look like they came right out of the comics. So you'll have like really realistic looking cities, but then with Captain America or Thor jumping around in the background. You get to see the coming of Galactus from the perspective of a man on the street. It's a really awesome comic. It'll show you a lot of the major milestones in Marvel, and there's a lot of deep cuts to it. It's quite well researched. Next, I'm going to give you Earth X, which is a dystopian, hopeless Marvel future. For some reason, these dystopian, hopeless futures really help you learn a lot about the universes. It uses the changes that these characters have gone through to explore all of their histories in an incredibly deep exploration of both the characters and continuity of the Marvel Universe. You're going to learn a lot of stuff that's wrong, but because they change a lot of stuff, they retcon a lot of stuff, but that's fine because you're going to learn about every single character in the Marvel Universe, including some incredibly obscure ones that they barely even use nowadays. And it really challenges the themes and feelings of Marvel Comics in a way that helps you really learn about it. Then Infinity Gauntlet, that one is actually canon, but it's written in a way where you never have to have read a comic before to follow it. It's just an awesome story. There's a reason that they based the entire Infinity Saga on Infinity Gauntlet. It's one of the most famous Marvel stories ever written. And if you read that, you'll get a feeling for most of the major heroes, but you'll also get a feeling for a lot of the big cosmic elements of Marvel. Like, you're going to learn a lot about the makeup of the universe besides just the heroes of Earth. And that's always very useful to know. But it's also a good story. I'm also going to toss you Marvel Zombies. I think that comic does a really good job. For some reason, when you're exploring the heroes as flesh-craving evil zombies, you learn a lot about the characters when you strip away what makes them the characters. Only read the first 2 volumes in the Army of Darkness spinoff. Everything after that is absolute garbage. But lastly for Marvel, and this is probably the main one, if you want a reading list for Marvel, just grab the original runs of comics. They are what the entire foundation of Marvel is built on. Like with DC, you can't go start from Superman or Batman #1 and get the story of the character because everything's always changing and being messed up, and a lot of those early stories are just kind of really good, but like throwaway stories that aren't really relevant. With Marvel, things that happen in early Fantastic Four and Spider-Man are going to be referenced forever into the modern day. Like, most Marvel comics assume that you've read those comics. I would heavily encourage you to do Spider-Man. It's great. It's the best one, But Fantastic Four, I'd heavily encourage you to read as well. Yeah, I'd just pick those up and just read them as far as you can stand. If you get to a point where you're not that into them, like, read as much of the original runs, like at least when like the original creators are still on it. Then after that, if you're not into that, then jump to whatever random era you want, because you're going to have most of what you're going to need to know to follow just about anything later on. So with Marvel, I heavily encourage that. If you're looking for superhero stories that capture the magic of Marvel and DC continuity, like you want to kind of ease into how complicated these worlds are, but you don't want to go into those just yet, then I would encourage you to read Watchmen. If you have not somehow read Watchmen, go read that one. Invincible does a really good job of like capturing what old Spider-Man comics used to feel like. Wanted by Mark Miller, even though it's just 1 volume, it built such a world. It feels so alive. If you like that, then you can follow it up with other Miller World comics that all culminate in a whole thing later on, which is really fun and interesting, like Kick-Ass, Superior, Jupiter's Legacy. He does a really good job at giving you all this convoluted stuff without it being very hard to follow. All right, well, that's the last question. This wound up being way fucking goddamn longer than I ever intended it to. I don't know if I answered any of these questions. I feel like I just rambled through them. You've now gotten a secret glimpse into what I actually sound like, which is, I fucking hate hearing what YouTubers actually sound like, so you'll have to let me know what you think about that. I figure you're already fucking subscribed if you already listened through all this, so thanks a lot. It means a lot to me. I'll have more normal content coming out as quickly as physically possible. Yeah, I really appreciate every one of your watches. I don't know what you like out of my content, whether it's more of the analysis side, the review side, or just the straight-up ranking side. But whatever it is, I'm really glad you're watching my videos. You specifically, right there. None of those other assholes listening, just you. You are my favorite follower, so thank you for listening through all of this. If you asked one of these questions, and I just didn't answer it in any way whatsoever, let me know below, and I'll do a better job at answering it for you. If you didn't get to ask a question in this because I did not let anyone outside of the people who happened to look at the community tab know that there were questions even being submitted, then I'll do another one of these at 50,000. So grab 35,000 of your closest friends, tell them to hit that subscribe button, and then before you know it, I will be able to answer your question. Until then, I'll see ya.